Alexi, my gosh, Republicans, all they have to do is read the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal or even listen to people like Ann Coulter to hear people cheering for the Republican Party saying, your abortion policy is a disaster. And that was even before this ruling over the weekend. What are Republicans on the Hill expecting?
It's such a mess. I mean, these conservative radio talk show hosts or conservative commentators on TV are clearly upset with this because they've seen how Republicans lost last cycle in particular on this very issue. There's no unifying position that the Republican Party has on abortion. But the interesting thing is that these pro-life leaders of these outside groups like SBA List, they are on the opposite side. They think that it should be a state's issue. They're privately pushing lawmakers and state legislators to continue to make it a federal issue because they think if it comes down to the states, they will continue to lose, given these ballot initiatives that we've seen in places like Kansas and Michigan. And now Democrats are trying to do that around the country again.
Lauren, is it not a real difficult position for those that are pro-life to really even mobilize state by state when you have this wave now of new voters, young voters, as well as women energized because they feel they're under attack?
Yeah, and I think a big part of the Republican leadership just has not gotten the memo that the sands in politics around abortion have completely changed since the Dobbs decision. And, for 50 years, it was a galvanizing issue on the right to, fight against abortion rights. That's all changed now. And interestingly, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, Republican, came out this morning and said that she thinks that the Biden administration should ignore the FDA ruling, that it goes too far and that it's a dangerous precedent. And I think part of what we're seeing is that the extremity of where these sort of undemocratic nature of how these bans are going. You look at what Ron DeSantis is trying to do in Florida after having said that he supported abortion rights after a certain term in viability. Now they're looking at a total ban on abortion, including a requirement that women prove that they have been victims of sexual assault in order to access the exceptions. And then, of course, this abortion pill ruling, which is the most, we talked about it yesterday on your show, the most ideologically written ruling. There's no legal basis for it. It's just pure ideology. Americans are looking at this and saying, absolutely not. And people are dying because of the lack of access. It's just outrageous.
Absolutely. It's absolutely impacted the lives of women and the people who love them. And it's not just actually abortion, but women who are sick during pregnancy or have fetal abnormalities. This is causing huge turmoil as it pertains to women's health. Political correspondent Jonathan Weissman has the analysis for the New York Times. Quote, a surge of youthful activism powered major liberal victories in Wisconsin and Chicago, and a boisterous legislative uprising in Tennessee as Republicans absorbed a string of damaging political blows, beginning with the arraignment of their leading presidential contender. The drumbeat of news seemed to batter the GOP's brand by the hour, but in an odd-numbered year, and a season when Americans are more taken with daffodils than with politics, the clamor of youthful activism and the anger may have left the more lasting impression. Young voters were not only crucial to the easy victory of Janet Protasiewicz, the liberal candidate for Wisconsin's open Supreme Court seat, they also powered the liberal candidate for mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. And in the Tennessee state capitol in Nashville, the chants of young protesters boomed through the hallways before, during, and after the votes to oust the two state representatives.
So, Alexi, what's so crazy about this is the fact you've got your presidential elections when everybody goes out, it seems, to vote. Then you've got the off-year elections where fewer people go out to vote. Then you have the off-year elections when even fewer people go out to vote, especially young people. I mean, there's been a rule forever. The more off-year the elections are, the older and the whiter the population is that gets out and vote. Here, like Kansas, which was in the summer, here we have an off-year election in the spring, and young people made a huge difference.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And same with Wisconsin. Young voters definitely powered that win there, and their turnout was higher than it's been in presidential elections, to your point. I mean, we've seen really since 2014 youth voters helping Democrats and increasing their turnout pretty consistently. But since 2018, 2022, 2020, especially with Donald Trump, they continue to show up because the lack of policies that they're asking for feel personal. They're tangible to these kids who are scared about going to school or can't have access to abortion or are curious about what new districts mean for their ability to vote. So they're holding these folks accountable. They're paying attention. And Democrats are trying to keep them engaged, doing everything from, rallies and organizing to the White House starting a new social media digital effort to really keep them on board. But Republicans, are not in step with young people personality-wise or policy-wise.
Joe, I just wanted to raise a related point. First you have the Dobbs decision, where you have the Supreme Court staking out, shall we say, an ideological position on this issue, so far that even the Chief Justice wouldn't sign on to it. Now you've had this other federal judge do this. This seems to me yet another example of how conservatives have totally lost their way. They're not conservatives anymore. But what worries me about it is the court used to be the entity of last resort in American society and American democracy. And now these judges are so politicizing the courts that I worry we no longer have a backstop, that American democracy has to go forward, where rather than the court being seen as the legitimate arbiter, is now just seen as another ideological participant, in which case, where does that leave us?
Well, and Richard, this is exactly what John Roberts was concerned about. He is a conservative jurist, but more importantly, he's an institutionalist. It's why he upheld Obamacare. He said, don't ask us to do here what you can do at the ballot box next year. And that's why he was desperately trying to get Kavanaugh to move his direction, to uphold some legitimacy in the court. If Kavanaugh had actually been intelligent in that moment, had been astute, he would have gone with Mississippi, which was a 15-week ban, which is where actually the majority of Americans are if you look at polling. Instead, what he did was create this monstrous, for Republicans, backlash, this monstrous situation for young women who have been raped, this ability of state legislators to be more extreme than ever. And it's just been a nightmare. And by the way, Richard, the argument against expanding the court has always been that it will delegitimize the court's credibility. Post-Dobbs, the court's credibility has plummeted. And it's plummeted, I hate to say this, I'm just going to say it. It's plummeted in part because you have one organization raising billions and billions of dollars that have just been outright saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make the court as ideological on conservative issues as possible. And then after Dobbs, they throw a banquet. And you have Supreme Court justices who ruled against 65, 70% of where Americans were on the issue of choice. And they go there and they have this huge celebration and they're laughing and joking about it. Richard, like everything else conservatives are doing, so-called conservative, nothing conservative about these people. They're radical extremists. But what Republicans are doing is they're setting up the left's best argument for expanding the court. And stay with me. Because usually what you'd say is, oh, but that will take away the credibility of the court. No, they're doing that right now. So once again, they're opening a door. And they're going to allow the left to walk through it like they did in Wisconsin, like they did in Michigan, like they did in 2022, like Trump does in Georgia. And in the end, when it happens, they're only going to have themselves to blame.
They're going to do that, and people on the left are going to have that reaction. I also think we're going to see more and more people begin to say, let's ignore the courts. almost a version of a 21st century version of nullification. They're not legitimate, therefore we're not going to respect their decisions. And again, I know Lauren wants to jump in here. Where does that leave us? It just worries me that American democracy is ultimately going to be the big loser here beyond the specifics of the issue.
Well, we got to look at the state houses. And obviously what happened in Tennessee last week is a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of Americans. But there is a really serious representation problem across a lot of state houses. You look at Ohio, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and more, where you have a Republican supermajority in a state that actually is evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans. In the case of North Carolina, they now have a one-seat supermajority because someone switched parties, a Democratic governor, a state where Trump only won by 1.3%, and they are about to pass a total abortion ban in a state where 60% of their own voters don't want it. So you start looking at the landscape. The courts are one piece of it, but where we really, I think there's a big opportunity is in these state houses. Americans have mostly not paid attention to who represents them in state legislatures. We got to start paying attention now, because this is where, as the courts send more and more issues back to the states, which is core Republican ideology, states' rights, states' decisions, Americans need to pay attention. We need to start funding candidates that are running. We talked about it before on the show. 45 seats in Florida state legislature in 22 ran unopposed. 0 Democratic candidates ran against those Republicans. That's not going to work. Folks have to do this.
Co-founder and CEO of All In Together, Lauren Leader, and political reporter for Axios, Alexi McCammond. Thank you both very much for being on this morning. We're going to turn now.